strategic move, a smart move, but I still don't think Giannis is going to be there in game one.
Of course, Giannis has missed Milwaukee's last 2 games with a hyperextended left knee, and that's a weird injury because depending on how severe it is, obviously depends on how long it takes you to recover from something like that, but that's going to be the biggest question going into tonight's game 1 and over the next several games, however long this series goes. Is Giannis going to play? When will he play? And what percentage will he be at, if not 100%? We've been talking about this all day, and there's so many things, Myron, to consider when it comes to what this Bucks team's going to look like. It's time now for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. What do you think happens? Before we get into all the scenarios, what do you anticipate happening now over the next week or two?
I still don't think we see Giannis until game 3. That's been my thought going into this. Now, granted, if the Bucks are down 2-0, will we see him at all? But I don't know that we're going to see him early, because here's the question. This is a guy who's going into his 5-year Supermax that starts next year. This is a $250 million man. This is a 2-time MVP. If you're the Bucks, yes, you want to see Giannis play right now. You have a chance to win your first championship in my lifetime. But at the same time, you've seen Kevin Durant, you've seen other guys who've come back, kind of forced the issue, and it wasn't a good decision. They cannot squander the best Giannis years, Alyssa, just because they want to try to get this win in the finals. I know it's tempting to do that, but they got to look at things long term, and I hope they do that. At the same time, I'm like, what if Giannis says, I'm going to play and nobody can stop me, Alyssa? Can they stop him from doing that?
I don't think so. Not when you're Giannis, not when you are the star of this team and this is the NBA Finals and you haven't won a championship since the 1970s. Like, no, I don't think you can tell Giannis, yeah, you got to sit on the bench tonight, buddy. If he wants to play, he's going to play. And yesterday, head coach Mike Budenholzer said that he was able to do some on-court work separate from the team's afternoon practice. He said he had a good day and he was making good progress. But of course, you're not going to give too much away depending on how he's feeling, good or bad, going into the finals. Now, let me ask you this. How important would tonight's game 1 be if the Bucks could squeak out a win and get this thing moving in the right direction, especially if Giannis isn't able to play tonight?
Changes everything. Because if you can steal one here without Giannis, now to me that buys you a little more time if Giannis needs it. And I think it also changes the tone of the series. You take game 1, you have the automatic edge. And if you do that without Giannis, you know you're the better team and you have a real chance to win, even if he can't come back. Now, the other flip side of that is, what if they go down 2-0 and Giannis maybe isn't 100%? What do you do then? Like, my challenge on Giannis being questionable here is you have to allow Giannis to play the way that he plays before you put him back out there, Alyssa. This is a guy who crashes into the lane, goes hard every play, plays both ends of the floor. He is aggressive every time he's out there. And if he's not 100% or close to 100%, I don't think you can play Giannis because it's just too dangerous for that knee. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I'd love to see the Bucks get game 1 and change the whole tone of this series.
I know Bucks fans are stressed right now, but Phoenix fans probably on the other side are sitting here like, how do we even game plan for this team? Because let's be honest, Giannis is the reason that Milwaukee is here in the finals. But as you said, even if he's able to play, it's a good chance that he'll be limited. That being said, in the games that we didn't see Giannis, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday really stepped up and carried that load and got them here. They had to finish that series, obviously against Atlanta. If Giannis is on the floor and he's only 75%, does that concern you? Do you want him out there? Would you rather him get pulled knowing that the team was able to win without him?
You know, I mean, as a fan and supporter, like if Giannis feels like he's good to go and he can contribute and he's healthy, you want to put him out there. But I still think it's a great risk just because of the way he plays. This isn't a guy that you can put in this series, Alyssa, and say, okay, you're going to stand on the perimeter, take threes, we're going to set a bunch of screens for you, we're going to try to make the game easy on you. Like, Giannis has to be a guy with the ball in his hands who drives to the rim, gets fouled, he's aggressive, and that's where 75% would concern me, because he only knows how to play at one speed, and that knee has to be able to support that. At the same time, I don't think the Bucks can beat the Suns in a 7-game series if Giannis isn't at least 85, 90%. So I don't know where he's going to be, what his status is, but that to me is the great X factor going into these next couple of games. They need Giannis, but they need Giannis to be able to play the way he's used to playing.
And if they don't have Giannis, they need Chris Middleton to do what he's been doing, certainly in the postseason. Like we said, he has had to carry the load at times offensively. And we saw that in Game 6 against the Hawks. He scored 30-plus points for the 4th time this postseason. He talked leading into the finals about how his team's been able to adjust without their star.
When Giannis is out there, a lot of times we could just give him the ball and let him go to work and, let him orchestrate a lot of things out there. Without him, we have to do it by committee, moving the ball around, driving it a little bit more, playing just a little bit faster with a little bit of different flow. But, I think guys have done a great job of adjusting with him not out there in, 2 of the most important games of our season.
We know what this team looks like with Giannis. We know what they look like without him. But the question is, how will they look in the finals with or without him? A lot of questions. As we said, he was upgraded to questionable per the Milwaukee Bucks going into Game 1 tonight. Let's talk about Phoenix, though, because, Myron, you mentioned this. We said it at the top of the show. This announcement of his upgrading status could be a little bit of gamesmanship to throw Phoenix off a little bit. How are they adjusting? How are they going into this Game 1 thinking, all right, we could see him, we might not, we don't know?
I think they got to prepare for Giannis, right? I think everything that Monty Williams is telling his team right now is, listen, we're going to plan as if Giannis is playing. DeAndre Ayton, get ready because he's going to be out there. And then you hope that you're pleasantly surprised if he's unavailable. But I also think this makes it feel like the Suns have to win this series because either you're playing a Bucks team that doesn't have Giannis or you're playing a Bucks team that doesn't have Giannis at 100%. So for me, if you're Chris Paul, and they've already written the 30 for 30 about Chris Paul, everybody assumes he's going to win this championship, and they're just waiting to finish the movie that they're going to release here in a couple months about him. He has to get a championship here because to me, Alyssa, if he doesn't, as many times he's had opportunities, he's made runs, he's been hurt. If Chris Paul doesn't get a ring now against this Bucks team, what does that mean for his legacy?
Oh, it makes me sweat thinking about the conversation because he's one of those players that you talk about being some of the greatest of all time. But when you have those conversations, like I'm picturing myself 15, 20 years from now sitting at my kitchen table with like my 10-year-old going, well, who's the best of the best? And they're going to be like, well, how many rings did they win?
Exactly.
That's how you determine that. Doesn't matter what sport, football, basketball, it's how many rings did you win? How many championships did you win? And right now, Chris Paul has all the other numbers to his resume, but is waiting on that ring. So to your point, I'm excited for this series just because how cool of a story would it be for Chris Paul to finally kind of cement that and say, I did it. I made it to the top. He was selected to the All-Star team 11 times prior to this first finals appearance. But, he's not thinking about any of that right now. It's all about the finals, and he shared some of his thoughts going into tonight's Game 1.
It's still basketball. I think we all locked into, the goal at hand. And I think for us, it's balance. And whatever it is, you always got to remember this is a kid's game that we play. You know what I mean? So this is a blessing and an opportunity to play this game. So there's balance. I think our team knows when to lock in and when we got to enjoy the moment and enjoy ourselves.
Throughout the postseason, Myron, at least I was kind of holding my breath like, okay, we don't want to see any injuries for Chris Paul. Like, make it. If you're going to make it, he needs to make it to the end. And then he drops 41 points to help send the Suns to the finals. And it feels like he is playing some of the best basketball that we've seen from him so far. Is he by far for you the one player that this is the most important for out on the floor? Because we talk about Giannis versus CP, and obviously that's going to be the big conversation. But Giannis has a long career ahead of them, and Chris Paul's a little bit older than Giannis is at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely more important for Chris Paul. I mean, people talk about Giannis like he's 33 or something like that. He's 26. His Supermax doesn't even kick in until next year. This is a guy who's going into the prime of his career, and he's already got 2 MVPs. So you'd like to see Giannis get it, especially knowing that the Brooklyn Nets are going to be healthy. The East will be more difficult to navigate, but I think he'll get other chances. This is it for Chris Paul. And here's the bottom line. We don't care about athletes who don't win championships long term. And we can say otherwise, but there's no proof of that. Like, to me, if Chris Paul wins a championship, he's going to be right behind Magic Johnson as the number 2 point guard of all time. If he doesn't win a championship, he'll just be one of the other good point guards, great point guards who's come through the NBA, but didn't get a ring. And that's just a different class. That's not necessarily fair because the credentials, the skill, the talent of Chris Paul, he makes everybody better. He's clearly one of the greats, but you need a ring to solidify that. And it feels like the door has just opened up even more for CP to get that. Giannis, even if he comes back, I think we all agree that he's not going to be 100%. And if you get the Bucks without 100% Giannis and you can't beat that team, then what does that mean for your legacy? I think CP has to get a ring here to feel like he's one of the greatest of all time and to be somebody that we're talking about 20 years from now.
He has 123 playoff starts, the most in NBA history before a player's first finals game. But like we said, all eyes ahead on Game 1. That segment brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. No contract, no compromise. Time now to go out to the Goodyear Hotline, where we find our friend Mark Spears, ESPN's NBA analyst and finals reporter. Mark, thanks for joining us here on the Max Kellerman Show. Obviously, we've been talking about the announcement that Giannis has been upgraded to questionable for tonight's Game 1. What do you make of that news?
Oh, that's tremendous news for the Bucks, because if there's one person that I don't think the Suns have anyone to match up with, it's Giannis. But what will Giannis be? Who knows? I mean, there was some talk that had this series made it to a Game 7, which would have been this past Sunday that Giannis would have played. And obviously I think the Bucks have been a little certainly close to the vest and revealing where he is and what he is, and perhaps the reason why they oddly flew back to Milwaukee instead of coming straight to Phoenix after knocking off Atlanta was maybe to get him some more treatment. But I don't know what to expect, but perhaps because he's a little bit he got a few more days to get right, that we'll see at least a decent Giannis is better than no Giannis, right?
Very true, Mark. But if he is not at 100%, how does that affect this series and what Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday have to do for the Bucks? That's an interesting question. They look against the Hawks. They play great basketball without him. They move the ball more. You saw Brook Lopez get the ball in the post. Chris Middleton is an elite player who, if he wasn't such a soft-spoken guy, I think we would be talking about him more. And he deserves to be talked about more. And perhaps what Perk says is true, that he is the best player on their team, although, Giannis is the flashiest, obviously. But I think you try him, and if he looks like Trae Young looked in terms of physically the last game, I think you take him out. You try it and see how it goes, and if it doesn't look good, take him out, because it could end up being at the detriment of the team more than a positive if he's moving bad.
Mark Spears joining us on the Goodyear Hotline, our ESPN NBA analyst ahead of Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight. Mark, how much do you look back at that regular season matchup? The Suns won both of those games by a combined 2 points. Do you take anything from that matchup into Game 1 tonight?
Nah. like none at all. And then Giannis didn't play in one of them, right? Didn't Torrey Craig play for the Bucks in one of them?
Yeah.
Now he's with the Suns. Yeah, what happened in the regular season is what happened in the regular season. I do think these Suns are certainly much more confident and strong in their belief of being super than they were at that time. They've grown a lot in these playoffs, beating the Lakers, beating the Clippers, sweeping the Nuggets. This is a different team than in the regular season, and if Giannis doesn't play, obviously the Bucks are a different team. So, I don't take anything from the regular season games other than they may have a better idea on what restaurants to go to in each city.
Hey, I like that.
Mark, my theory is that 20 years from now, if CP doesn't get a ring, we won't remember him. We won't talk about him as one of the greats. What do you think about that?
I love you. I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
I totally disagree. I think Chris has his legacy is set, when they do the 75-year anniversary next year and name the top players, he'll be there. He'll be one of the greatest point guards of all time. Karl Malone, John Stockton, Charles Barkley, they all don't have titles, but there's certainly reverence for what they brought to the NBA and what they did. So I definitely think that it will put a cherry on top of what is going to be a Hall of Fame career. Does it maybe give him a knock against the Magics and Isaiah Thomases of the world? I could see maybe that, well, that's what he didn't have. But I still believe right now you can make an argument that he's in the top 5 point guards of all time without a ring. So, no, I mean, and maybe I'm too close to it because I've seen him since birth into this league and seen how much he's grown and what he's done. And I also think that what he does is extremely underrated. Like, think about it. The Suns are in the finals.
Yeah.
Like, that's just craziness to me. And to me, he was the MVP of the league. Not because he didn't score 30 a game, but because he brought these young guys, a 24-year-old shooting guard, a very young center, to a place that perhaps before the season you would have never, if you would have said they would have never reached that moment, you wouldn't have blinked an eye. So, you my boy though. I love you, but I think he's solidified. I actually think getting to the finals, at least making it to the finals, shuts a lot of things down in terms of criticism of him. Like, what happens is what happens, but, like, he at least has made it to a final.
Mark Spears joining us here on the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus. Alyssa Lang, Myron Metcalf here with you. Mark, before we let you go, I'm curious, as a basketball fan, looking at these two fan bases and the droughts that they have experienced over the last several is an understatement years, who would this be bigger for? Which fan base do you think would relish a championship more this year?
I mean, you got to say it's tough because at least Milwaukee has one. It might have dust on it, right? But they do have one, and I would guess for most of their fans, it wasn't in their lifetime. I just probably say Milwaukee because it was just so long ago, and they've been expecting this for a couple years now, whereas Phoenix, it's like, whoa, we hit the lottery. Like, you know what I mean? Like, none of their fans expected this fast or at all. So, yeah, either way, I expect there to be tears. I mean, if you saw how the Suns fans celebrated after just winning the West Finals, you thought they had won a championship. But for Bucks fans, man, it's almost like in the same territory as the Cubs, or when I saw the Warriors get their first one in years. I think there'll be a lot of emotion there and some good feelings towards them doing something amazing with Giannis, or actually maybe without him.
Going to be a lot of emotions on either side, no matter what ends up happening. Mark Spears, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Enjoy the finals.
You still love me, Myron?
Hey, man, we're still cool. We're still cool.
All right, bro. Y'all take care.
We had to make sure we mended that before he went off the air with us. We don't want to start anything here filling in on the Max Kellerman Show. Of course, the NBA Finals do start tonight, and you can listen right here on ESPN Radio. Don't miss Game 1. Bucks Suns coverage starts 8 o'clock Eastern Time right here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All right, we're going to talk plenty more about the NBA Finals. Myron Metcalf, Alyssa Lang here with you filling in on the Max Kellerman Show. But coming up next, we're talking Aaron Rodgers. He's got a golf match going down this afternoon, but there's plenty to unpack when it comes to his future, whether it's with the Green Bay Packers